I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions that start with why, and we'll come back to why your media brand is so unusual in America today. But let's start with Donald Trump. You did a great commentary on CNN last weekend, laying out what you thought Donald Trump should be saying about the Epstein matter. Why is he not following your advice? And first, tell people overview what you think he should be saying, and then why you think he's not.
Well, I think he ought to own it. I think that he ought to own those parts that he really can't deny. The idea that Pam Bondi told him in May that his name appears in the files. And by the way, of course his name appears in the files. They were associated. By nature. An investigatory file is probably going to have thousands of names in it. So it would be highly unusual if his name were not in those files. Why would he instead, deny that? I don't get it. I don't believe that the Wall Street Journal made up out of whole cloth the existence of a leather-bound birthday book where they tell you the name of the binder. And I also believe that there's a contribution in the book from Donald Trump. Now, maybe staff submitted it. I certainly don't believe that he wrote this imaginary exchange with Jeffrey Epstein. But again, on a binary matter like this, which is different from E. Jean Carroll said X and Donald Trump said Y, that book is going to come out. We're going to see the page that purports to be from Trump. Why not simply say, I don't remember making a birthday submission, but I'm sure that I did. Given the nature of the requests that I receive, it would be highly normal for me to do so, but don't read too much into it because the guy was a crumb. And when I figured out how unsavory he was, I ghosted him. In short form, that's what he ought to be doing.
So why do you think he's not?
Okay, two possibilities. One, because there's something nefarious there. I don't think that's the case because although he has a fondness well documented for women and back in the day was quite the playboy and so forth, I don't think it's part of Trump's MO like it was Epstein's MO to be attracted to girls, young girls. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something embarrassing in those files. I don't think so. And therefore, I come to the conclusion that it's just part of his Roy Cohn-inspired DNA of deny, make him prove it, and never retreat. It served him well. And also, Mark, because perhaps nobody in the inner circle wants to tell him what I just told him because they don't want to speak truth to power, always for fear of being X'd out of the inner circle.
Right. Okay. If you could interview Trump, give me 3 questions you'd ask on this matter.
On this matter?
Yeah.
I think I'd begin by asking him, why are you denying the existence of a book that clearly the Wall Street Journal knows exists? And if you're saying something different than that, then tell us specifically exactly what that is. Secondly, I think I would want to know relative to Epstein, I would want to know, why would you say that your name doesn't appear in a file when you would certainly recognize that hundreds, if not thousands of names would be in that file? Aren't you setting yourself up for further problems, politically speaking, on this issue? And then I would want to know specifically, what was the break in the relationship? Walk me through it.
I love all those. Here's the one I'd add, because I'd ask all 3 of yours. Tell us the story in great detail of how your relationship with Jeffrey Epstein started and what it consisted of. I'm amazed we don't know the answer to that question. How did they meet? How much time did they spend together? Why did Trump, who never flies on anyone else's plane, fly on his plane? I think my theory remains that no, he didn't break the law necessarily. There was no involvement with girls he knew to be underage, but that the relationship with Epstein was much more intense and complicated than we currently know. That's my theory. What do you think of my theory?
Complicated and intense how?
More time together.
Right.
More schemes together. More fratty schemes together. That's what I think. And I base that in part on, we have 2 accounts now on the record from women who tell stories about being in the presence of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. And they're both fratty stories.
It makes sense. I mean, it's completely plausible. It doesn't change the advice that I'd be giving him if I were in the business of giving him advice. I, by the way, have a theory as to why Todd Blanche went to Florida and spent 2 days with Ghislaine Maxwell. Do you want to hear that?
Go on.
All right. I think he was there to collect scalps and not that of Donald Trump. I think that the mission was come home with detail of some of the others with whom Epstein had a relationship and be prepared to name names. I'm thinking of some people, but I don't want to besmirch them by naming them. But I think that's the mission so that it can then be Ghislaine Maxwell says Trump was a friend of Epstein, but there was nothing illicit to it. And at the same time, she says he was, and he was, and uses some of the better knowns of those who are Trump nemesis. And now all of a sudden he seeks to throw it on the Democrats.
Yeah, you have an audience that's varied. It's one of the strengths of your oeuvre, but your audience isn't super MAGA. Some of them are, but overall, it's not. Is your audience interested in the Maxwell story, the Epstein story? What interests them about the Epstein story? Is it like OJ? They're just interested in it because it's a kind of a whodunit, or is there
all
other
the elements? You'd be fair to say to me, well, what makes you think that they are? What makes you think that they are engaged? And I would say, anecdotally, the tone of the calls, the volume of the calls, and also the fact that Saturday's CNN poll question of the day, which asked, why did Blanche go down to Florida, had just a tick under 60,000 votes. That's a lot of votes, even though we do well on Saturdays. Yeah, people are into it. Even if they want to call me and tell me, they're not into it, or call me, take the time to call and say, why are you talking about this? I always am amused by well, why are you taking the time to call me? Why don't you call somebody else on a different issue? So no, I think it's got the elements. Now, how long it lasts, he comes home from Scotland. The House is now in recess. I'm not sure where it goes from here, but my suspicion is that it doesn't let up.
Yeah. Trump breeds the unprecedented, either by himself or by people around him. As a Philadelphia lawyer, can you think of an analog to a deputy attorney general, the number 2 person, flying and spending 2 days interviewing someone in federal custody? Can you think of an example of something like that?
Absolutely not. And certainly not a number 2 in the DOJ who previously was the criminal defense attorney for that figure when he was, being charged federally. And of course, I'm thinking of the Stormy Daniels case. I mean, I think it begs this question of whether Blanche was there representative of our interests as Americans in his role as the number 2, or as Trump's former personal lawyer.
Yeah. And again, another unprecedented thing that the government's filled with former Trump lawyers. Like, most presidents don't bring their own legal defense team into the government with them.
Most lawyers have not been represented by so many lawyers over the course of their careers.
That's true.
He's got a huge bench to pick from.
That's true.
He's picking from his past lawyers.